Blue-White Control versus Rabble Red. I'm not too surprised to see Rabble Red out here, given what Tom did last weekend.
It's sort of been the mono red deck du jour ever since M15 got printed. Goblin Rabble Master, a huge upgrade for a deck that was already reasonable. Phil Silberman on your right, he top-aided the last time that we were here with Blue-White Control as well. No surprise to see him running it back.
Thomas Graves will start off with a Fire Drinker Satyr. It's coming in to the red zone. Silberman's going to take at least 2, and it will only be 2. So round number 1 is underway here. It's a Brain Emissary, it's another Fire Drinker Satyr, and it's a passing of the turn back over to Silberman. You take a look at Silberman's deck list here. You know, in a situation like this, 2 cards with the same name, searching for Detention Sphere. You're not going to find any. There are 3 copies of Planar Cleansing. That might not be a great spot to be in for this particular matchup.
Planar Cleansing is slow in the beatdown matchups, particularly this one. It's going to be really rough. This matchup's already challenging for Blue-White. Without access to Detention Sphere, I think Phil is in a lot of trouble.
It's a Legion Loyalist, and it's attack with everybody. You saw Graves play a Mutavault. He will pump a Fire Drinker Satyr, so it'll be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 points of damage. Silberman's already down to 10.
And that Mutavault, a critical piece of all of this too. Even if Phil is able to find a sweeper on turn 4, it may not matter.
It's a Hallowed Fountain there for Silberman. No basics in play just yet, so all he can do is pass the turn back. He did draw a copy of Last Breath for the turn. Graves will draw a card. There is another copy of Mutavault. He will fire up the Mutavault, and everybody's going to come in yet again. Silberman's going to have to use a Last Breath on something here. Chances are it'll be the Mutavault, but I'm not sure he can get himself out of this situation.
Thomas may just pass here if Phil does nothing. The second Mutavault is, well, there's a lethal lightning strike. I was going to say the second Mutavault is a bit of a challenge for Phil because it's possible he could Last Breath the initial one, play a Supreme Verdict, and then maybe try to get back in the game, but lightning strike finishes him off there instead.
Pretty tough for Blue-White Control to beat a draw like that from Rebel Red.
With no removal spell on turn 2, you know, if you have a Last Breath and Azorius Charm, you may be able to save off that kind of draw. But when you're on the draw and you do nothing on turn 2 and you have no Detention Spheres in your deck, you're not beating any sort of draw out of Rebel Red.
Well, 3 turns, basically, going to start things off here. So I guess we'll go to the sideboards right away. Thankfully for Silberman, he's got some really nice options here. 4 copies of Nyx Leash Ram, 2 Archangel of Thune, Jace's Ingenuity, and Negate, 2 copies of Dispel, 2 Gainsay, a Deicide, a Last Breath, and an Elspeth Sun's Champion. I expect to see the 4 Rams come in. Wouldn't be surprised to see the 2 Archangels join us as well, and then a copy of Last Breath. That'll be 7 cards. You can certainly make an argument for Negate and the Dispels in the board. So he's got plenty of options. He can make his deck a lot more lean, lower to the ground, get those Planar Cleansings out of his deck, and be able to interact early and often.
Well, I'm not sure he wants to get away from Planar Cleansing altogether.
Really?
Because
okay.
It's still, I think going down to maybe 1 or 2 copies is correct. It's hard to find a lot of room for him to make cuts in this matchup because the counter spells are also really poor. So I'm not sure exactly what his balance of that is supposed to be, but I'm not sure he's going to want to get away from Planar Cleansing altogether, though 3 is a lot.
What do we see on Graves' side?
2 copies of Boros Reckoner, 2 copies of Mizium Mortars, a Dynacharge, 3 Eidolon of the Great Rebels, 3 Magma Sprays, a Harness by Force, a Mutavault, and 2 copies of Skullcrack. So there's 2 Mutavaults in the main deck, a 3rd in the sideboard. I think the extra Mutavault's going to come in here, very good against a deck packing a bunch of sweepers, 2 Skullcracks, a little bit more burn, and a way to sort of fight Sphinx of Revelation and maybe some other life-gaming elements that Phil brings to the table. I think the 3 copies of Eidolon of the Great Rebel are going to come in. Not that Phil has a lot of cheap cards, but if Thomas is able to get it to trigger even once it's done its work. And I think the 1 copy of Dynacharge might be okay to bring in here as well. Even though there's a lot of sweepers in Phil's deck, there's not that much pinpoint removal. Phil's going to get an opportunity, or Thomas rather is going to get an opportunity to develop his board, and Dynacharge may come up as a factor.
And Dynacharge would have been a beating in that last game, that's for sure. I'll tell you a place where you can't play Dynacharge because it's rotating out. It's Autumn States. Yeah, October 11th and 12th. I guess if they reprint it, which would be strange.
Because it has overload on it?
Yeah, given that we know the mechanics of the set. But, you know, anything can happen.
We can assume that that's not happening.
Okay, so we're not going to be casting Dynacharge that weekend. But given what I've seen so far of Constar Cure, there are going to be a lot of sweet cards to cast on October 11th and 12th.
Yeah, the sweet cards and cons combined with all the new mana fixing, I think we're going to see an entirely new World of Standard, which will be a lot of fun. Autumn States is coming October 11th and 12th. StarCityGames.com stays for more information. Find out the location nearest to you. The spring states were so well received that we're bringing this to autumn of this year as well. And also we already have scheduled for spring and autumn of next year. So play for prizes, points, and that medal that you see there.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about Constar Cure a lot this weekend. So if you guys are interested in game designer Patrick, that's different from broadcaster Patrick.
They're kind of the same
They
guy.
got to have that designation. They're different people. If you're interested in game designer Patrick's opinion on the brand new cards, well, stay tuned for round after one, because that's where we're going to start the fun. Talk about our good friend Sarkin, also Soren making a return. I don't know what Soren's doing here.
I don't know.
I don't know if what's he doing in this world? I have
Taking
no
some
idea.
vampires?
Yeah, absolutely. he is.
What he's doing is actually quite similar to what he was doing before.
That's true. That's true. When he was the Lord of Innistrad. Yes. Very similar stuff.
He has not picked up many new skills since returning.
Hey, no, Sarkin has certainly changed.
Sarkin has changed,
But
yes.
Soren is,
absolutely.
Yeah, Soren is just doing the same old thing.
Kind of the same stuff.
Again, we'll be talking about this quite a bit. We definitely want to hear from you guys on how you feel about the new cards at SCG Live, hashtag SCGSTL. You can also hit Patrick and me up at Cedric A. Phillips or at Basic Mountain. A lot of conversation to be had about a lot of sweet new cards. I am a big, big fan of this brand new set. Love the flavor. I'm a Jeskai mage.
Okay.
I like the monks. I think it's pretty sweet, actually. When I played Diablo, I used to be a monk.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like it.
Speaking of which, I was discussing with Adrian Sullivan yesterday that the one football player that he liked growing up was Art Monk because
That is very strange.
This is the second time in the last, 16 hours that something monk related has come up in conversation with me, which is some sort of a record.
It's a Legion Loyalist in for one for Graves to get game number 2 underway. You saw Silberman just lead off with an island. He's going to cycle a Quicken here. He will untap and take a draw. You saw Syncopate was the draw off of the Quicken. Graves will draw here now.
No Ram there for Phil. A big sigh of relief for Tom.
Yeah, Ram really makes things difficult for this Rabble Red deck. It's an Ass Zealot. We'll see if this resolves. The answer is no. Syncopate will take care of that. So just an attack for 1. Silverman's going to go down to 18. This is how the game needs to start. These kind of exchanges are very important.
Yep, keeping his head above water, getting through his deck. It doesn't look like he has a sweeper, so he may have to fight a protracted game here, but as you mentioned, off to a much better start than we saw in game 1.
Silverman for his third turn just plays a Hollow Fountain tapped and passes the turn back. As you did mention, Phil did top 8 the Standard Open the last time we were here, along with his good buddy Kent Ketter. They were actually the number 1 and 2 overall seeds, so I'm sure it was a lot of fun for them to both be able to top 8. However, neither of them did win the tournament. It was Jonathan Habel who got the job done there, so we'll see if Silverman can maybe go back-to-back here and make top 8. Because now we've got to stoke the flames, and that's going to get syncopated as well. You saw Burning Tree Emissary come first, generate the mana, and then an attempt at the stoke.
So I think what Thomas wanted to do there was do something with the Burning Tree Emissary mana without playing further into a Supreme Verdict that he's worried about. Now we know that Phil doesn't have it, but Thomas is not armed with that information. So he was trying to be efficient there without exposing himself too much to a hypothetical Supreme Verdict.
It's a Temple of Deceit after a Divination. Silberman deciding if he wants to put that card on top or bottom. You had a feeling that Graves would board in the Dynacharge, and he actually does have it in his hand right now. So we'll see if he decides that this is the best spot to use it. He also has a copy of Skullcrack there as well. So how he wants to go about, racking up the points of damage here. This could be a great spot to use the Dynacharge. Looks like he's going to fire the Mutavault and just attack for 5, put Silberman down to 12.
Now that he has a Skullcrack and a Rebel Master, he has a very good follow-up in case he gets hit with Supreme Verdict. So I think he wants to try to save this Dynacharge for a little bit longer down the line.
It's an Archangel of Thune. And now maybe Graves is wishing he had that Stoke the Flames now, as getting that 3-4 off the table is looking to be a little bit problematic for Thomas. I see a bit of a smile comes across his face because he knows he's definitely in some trouble now. He's going to fire up the Mutavault and come in here with just these 2 creatures. And it looks like Silverman's just going to take the blow. No interest in blocking. Yes, you certainly have to have the fear of a card like Rebel Mach in that situation.
For sure, and I think Phil is intending on not blocking there, untapping and attacking. But if Thomas hits him with a Skullcrack, it puts a lot of pressure on Phil to have something good on the back end to prevent dying.
Now, the one thing there is, if Graves had a Rebel Maka, you can kind of sniff that out, actually, right? Because he would have attacked with the Legion Loyalist as well to give all his creatures +1/+1 in first strike, first strike and trample and all that good stuff. But didn't attack with that, so I'm a little surprised to not actually see Silberman blocking the situation. Though, Graves could be setting a trap in a different way.
I think that I would have, that was a pretty risky attack that we saw from Thomas last turn. I think that if he sends in his Legion Loyalist, it's a bit more concealed. He might get in a free point of damage. Now, Thomas's trick there is Dynacharge, so if Phil blocks the Legion Loyalist, it's all sorts of trouble for Thomas. But in the likely event that if Phil blocks, he's blocking a 2-power creature because he's playing around Rebel Maka more so than something like Dynacharge there, you may be able to get the Archangel off the table. As it stands, things worked out very nicely for Thomas that last turn.
Yeah, the Skullcrack ends up being great. The Archangel doesn't even get a counter. and doesn't gain any life. So Silberman's at 5 here. You see a Jace come down. That's a Dynacharge with Overload.
Yeah, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is exact seize.
Because the Loyalists will go from a 1 to a 0, from Jason up to a 2, and Burning Tremors here will go from 2 to 1, and then up to a 3.
Yep. Yep. So Dynacharge is 4 points of damage, and the Burning Tremors has a power left over. So
That's
there
it.
you go.
And here's a cycled Quicken from Phil, an extension of the hand. Thomas Graves will defeat Phil Silberman 2 games to 0 very, very quickly. Rabble Red running over Blue-White control.
With no Nyx Ram on turn 2 and no Detention Sphere in the list, it's going to be hard. Phil can still get draws that are capable of winning the game, but it's tough. This matchup's really hard, and Thomas's draws were equipped with a lot of Mutavaults as well, so he can afford to be pretty liberal playing into Supreme Verdict because he had backup the whole way through.
Congratulations again to Thomas Graves on defeating Phil Silberman 2 games to 0. Rabble Red gets the job done very, very quickly. Again, over Blue-White control. I imagine we'll have another match here for you guys in just a moment.